Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Belsley.
Here.
Hare.
Here.
Herman. Kaufman.
Here.
Newhouse.
Here.
Yarko.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight we do not have a public hearing, nor do we have any presentations. So under public comments, anyone in the audience who would like to speak, please come forward to the microphone. Now.
I'm Sam Herstein. I lived here in Morton for many years, and I was wondering why, if everyone in here knows about the American Legion, the VFWs, and those clubs that are self-supporting, and when their signs are up, they take them down the next day. But someone in here ordered someone to pull them up down there on the lot for no particular reason at all, other than there was no sidewalk there. So when it comes to that, they take them down the next day, and for this, having done that under those conditions, is absolutely terrible. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Herstein. Are there any other comments? Okay. Request for removal of items from the consent agenda. The consent agenda tonight has the approval of the regular meeting minutes of August 6, 2012, approval of the bills, ordinance number 12-11, an ordinance amending Chapter 6, or Title 6, Chapter 2, Section 6 of the Municipal Code under disorderly conduct. And with this one here, I'd like to read something directly out of the ordinance. This relates to the two following items. The wording is transmits or causes to be transmitted in any manner to the police department or fire department or paramedic department a false request for an ambulance, emergency medical technician ambulance, or emergency medical technician paramedic, knowing at the time that there is no reasonable grounds for believing that such assistance is required. The second item is calls the number 911 for the purpose of making or transmitting a false alarm or complaint and reporting information when at the time the call or transmission is made, the person knows there is no reasonable grounds for making the call or transmission and further knows that the call or transmission could result in emergency response of any public safety agency. Basically what that says is if you call the police, paramedics, all of those people, and there is no reason for doing so, that you will probably be given a warning, not necessarily always, but probably will be given a warning, and the second time you do face a possible fine on that. So we want everyone to understand a false call on 911 or to the paramedics or any emergency people is not going to be tolerated. On the other hand, if you have a good reason, for whatever good reason it is, call just like you have in the past. We're probably talking a couple, 3 people out of 16,000 in Morton. But we want to make sure that our emergency people are not going to false calls. That could cause the death of someone else. Okay, under resolutions, resolution number 1212, a resolution approving the framework, priority, and initiative recommendations for regional economic development. This is a resolution which I'm requesting. What it basically says is that we are in support of a regional economic development process, and I happen to be involved in that process, and we also have some other individuals in the community that are also involved in that, including some county board members. And there is no other business. Is there anyone in the audience? I guess there isn't. Well, you don't want to, do you? Since we have no audience other than you. Okay. In that case, is there any items here that the board would like to move down to action item 8? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Yarko.
Yes.
Okay, I usually don't do this, but I think it's important to respond to Mr. Herstein's comments. And the reason why I'm doing this was because on the way over here, not knowing that he was going to be here, I was thinking that one of the future meetings I was going to speak to this issue. We do have an ordinance that does not allow signs on public right-of-way. Now, what is public right-of-way? For the most part, it is the land between the curb and the sidewalk. And when there is no curb in the sidewalk, for the most part, you could step off 8 to 10 feet, and that is public right-of-way. So, with the exception of real estate signs, all other signs, that's a Freudian slip, garage sale signs, pork chop sale signs, fish fry, everything like that, you cannot put on the public right-of-way. You can go up to that landowner's door and ask if you can place it on their property if it is not something that relates, that's work-related. For example, a lawn mowing sign trying to publicize your lawn mowing business. If it is work-related as far as doors and windows, and the person on that property is having their doors and windows fixed, that is an appropriate sign on the landowner's property. So we're not specifically looking at the Legion or the VFW. We are looking at everyone. And fortunately or unfortunately, Mr. Spangler has that negative job of having to go out and grab the signs and take them down. So I wanted everyone to understand this is the reason why if you put a sign out and it disappears because it's on village right-of-way.
Or if you get a notice.
Or if you get a notice. There you go. Okay. Mr. Clerk, do you have anything?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Madam Treasurer.
I'd like to ask approval to transfer $41,000 from the general fund, $183,000 from the water and wastewater depreciation fund, and $4,000 from the stormwater depreciation fund to the capital projects fund.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Hare.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Yarko.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Motion passed. Anything else, ma'am?
No.
Chief?
I just make the board aware that we've been approved again for a drug drop-off site with the DEA on September the 29th. It's a Saturday from 10 to 2. As soon as flyers and documentation are available, we'll be posting those on the website.
Okay. Thank you.
Will you be posting what can be dropped off, or is it?
Yeah, I will send a letter to the papers regarding that, as well as we'll post that on. But it's all liquids in sealed containers. All pills. What we don't take are any injectables or intravenous medication.
Counselor?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Chief?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Lutterbell?
The Public Works recap for the month of July is in your packets. That's all I have tonight, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Spangler?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Under trustees, Mr. Belsley?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Hare?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Kaufman?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Newhouse?
Zoning issues update tonight, Your Honor. We do these from time to time, useful for the trustees and perhaps for folks who are watching or interested.
We typically look at kind of what's going on in the village, and in particular to some of the zoning enforcement issues. And we paid more close attention in the past few years because of the economic downturn that's caused some probably more distress than we've seen in a long time. And we've had more complaints from around the village about issues, particularly with houses that might be empty and lawn care and those kinds of things. But the total number of issues as of now is actually down relative to last year. So that's the good news to report. There continue to be a number of foreclosures, 30 plus by my count, in and around Morton in varying stages of foreclosure. There are some problem properties, but they are being managed through routine handling by Mr. Spangler. There are no evident major problems that I know of tonight, no major issues with commercial properties. The one remaining issue is probably there's some cosmetic work and the question about what will be rebuilt at LS downtown, but that's a result of the fire. Residential zoning issues, other than the vacant properties, appear to be down, but housing starts are up, and that's good news for Village. I think we're at 49 now relative to a similar number for all of last year. Is that correct, Mr. Spangler? Right. And about 50 permits written, so more good news. That's consistent with about our 1% growth trajectory in housing development. So that's good for everybody. Continued investment evident in homes and businesses, remodeling, expansion, landscaping, just everywhere you look. There are some standouts, I think. We talked about the downtown improvements earlier in the facade awards, but there's some others. The NAPA store on Detroit, and I think you mentioned that one evening, Your Honor. Morton Tool Rental, which is a significant improvement on the First Street from the previous environment. The work underway at Lighthouse Automotive and the Mike Murphy property, where the trees are beginning to mature and really makes a very attractive entryway into Morton and for his business. On Maxine Drive, the Awan Pharmacy, nice installation, beautiful job by Dr. Soderstrom on his clinic, and Rogi's Learning Place coming along. So there's some great commercial development. Some residential improvements that I've seen on Main Street, some new driveways and landscaping, some lawns being installed in the area north of Birchwood and south of the point where the business area starts there at Chicago. So that's all great. Couple of reminders for folks. If you are doing construction, putting up a fence, doing other kinds of things, changing the footprint of your house, you may need a building permit, and if you will check with Mr. Spangler, he'll be happy to help. And for all related housing or zoning or other questions, Mr. Spangler and Cindy Coyle and his department will be happy to help with that if people have questions. You mentioned the signs. Curiously enough, I had an item on that. The contractor and all other signs should be in the property lawn, not in the right-of-way. And folks might want to, this question comes up from time to time, folks might want to check with their neighborhood covenants and homeowners association rules, because the deed restrictions may be different from village ordinance. And where they are more restrictive, then those rules apply, but that is civil law, not municipal law. So we don't enforce those. We enforce the village ordinances. But if you have another issue related to homeowners association rules, for example, that needs to be resolved within the homeowners association. So if you have questions about that, again, we may be able to help. Those rules may also restrict design, use of some things like above-ground pools. Are prohibited in some places by homeowners association rules or deed restrictions, but not by the village. Fencing types, for example, chain link versus picket. And again, the village doesn't enforce, but they could be neighborhood issues. So worth checking on. And again, the village staff is available to advise on all of those questions if people have concerns about it. But otherwise, things look pretty good. And as I said, the total number of complaints are down, total number of problem areas are down. I continue to believe that although there are a number of distressed properties, management seems to be moving in the right direction on that, and I'm hoping that one of these days we'll be able to report that none of those exist anymore. And that's all I have tonight.
You mentioned building permits, so what about fences and driveways?
It depends on what you're doing, and I may require some help here from Mr. Spangler, but if you were putting in a new fence, a fence generally requires a building permit. If you are replacing a driveway and not changing the footprint of the driveway, then I'm not, is a permit required in that case, Mr. Spangler?
Not to replace the drive.
Not to
but
replace,
if they
right.
replace the approach, there's a permit for that because we need to do an inspection on it.
Yeah, if you replace the apron, and that also has to coincide with the Americans with Disabilities Act, so that you will need a permit for. But if you're simply replacing the driveway, no permits required. My advice on fences is always ask. If you don't have to have one, we'll be happy to tell you that you don't need one. But if you're putting up a new fence, it's very likely you'll need a building permit. So I might inquire if you've got a standalone above-ground pool, even a kid's pool in your yard, and it's deeper than, it's 18 inches or deeper, you require a fence. So, again, village staff will be happy to help. They're there for your use. You're paying their salaries. Call them up, ask them, get help, make use of them.
I gave my sermon on the signs, so can I ask you another question?
Sir?
Could you give me a little information on boats or RV vehicles on the driveway and maybe cars in the front yard rather than on the driveway or in the streets? Now, this is just a 5-minute sermon.
I'll make it shorter than that.
Thank you.
At the outset, I said that we, over the past few years, we had more complaints. As Morton has grown, we have had some more issues related to RVs, boats on trailers. The simple answer is RVs, boats on trailers, campers, other such equipment cannot be stored in a driveway. And they generally, again, there are police ordinances that apply, and I won't try to speak for the police department, but generally speaking, there's a 24-hour limit on parking. I think vehicles have to be moved 150 feet every 24 hours or something of that nature. And again, if there's a question, people should call. There is a requirement for parking on a hard surface, a police ordinance that applies. So if you've got cars, you're parked your car into the shade tree to wash it and wax it on a Sunday afternoon, you're probably not in trouble. But if you're using the lawn for parking, you probably sooner or later will get a notice from the police department.
Okay, thank you. It's an educational setting tonight, isn't it? All right, Mrs. Yarko.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Okay, tonight we have a closed session for purpose of discussing appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act. And the second one is purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body pursuant to Section 2C5 of the Open Meeting Act. And the third one is purpose discussing the sale of property owned by the public body pursuant to 2C6 of the Open Meetings Act. May I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Hoffman.
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Yarko.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
And there will not be any action after